Governor, thank you for joining us. What will you be looking for tonight, and what will be the challenges for the president making the case to an electorate that, well, on the Republican side, the clear, by far front runner is former President Donald Trump?
Well, look, I'm pleased that the president's coming back here to Pennsylvania to talk about democracy and freedom, because I think democracy and freedom are very much central to the question of who the next president should be. And clearly, it is on the ballot and has been over the last couple cycles. I'm pleased he's coming here to Pennsylvania because Pennsylvanians have a unique role with democracy and freedom. What began as seeds being planted by William Penn, they were ensured and grown at that field in Valley Forge where Washington and his band of patriots made sure that that dream of freedom and democracy could continued on with Franklin and Cecil B. Moore and others who have stepped up throughout time when we have been tested here as Pennsylvanians, here as Americans, to make sure democracy and freedom could be protected. And in more modern times, we have seen in 2020 Pennsylvanians rise up at the ballot box, vote on democracy and freedom, reject chaos, and elect Joe Biden. We have seen the offspring of Donald Trump be defeated in resounding fashion, as I did to his candidate in 2022 when democracy and freedom were on the ballot. In short, Mika, Pennsylvanians always step up for democracy and freedom. And I'm glad that the president is coming here today to highlight the importance of those issues and the importance that we have as Americans to constantly and consistently do that work to protect our freedom, to protect our democracy, and to perfect our union.
There's no question that all of these points are really important, and we want to hear them. At the same time, there are a lot of Democrats who are really scared as to the state of the election as it is right now, with Donald Trump polling against Biden and among the Republicans so strongly. And this is while story after story, after indictment, after today's latest news, millions from foreign governments, they just pass by with no accountability. It seems that Donald Trump appears to be in a very different category when it comes to breaking democratic norms, corruption, possibly even crime, than every other American in the United States. So my question is, some are wondering when Joe Biden will take Donald Trump on personally. Do you think he should?
I think he needs to highlight the importance of democracy and freedom, exactly what he is doing today, and take the fight right to the former president to expose the very issues that you are talking about. Mika, what I would say to folks who are scared, stop being scared and get to work. We all have to do our work to defend our democracy. We all have to do our work to make sure that Joe Biden is reelected. And it falls to each and every one of us, as we've learned through our nearly 250 years of history. It's going to be ordinary Americans rising up, demanding more, seeking justice, trying to protect our freedom, expanding our democracy. That is the work that falls to us. And yes, every 4 years, part of that work involves going to the ballot box and electing those who are pro-freedom and pro-democracy, people like Joe Biden, people like our senior senator, Bob Casey. And that is the work that now falls to us as Americans.
Governor, good morning. Great to have you back on the show. You have a lot to teach Joe Biden in this election, and by that I mean you won in a swing state in Pennsylvania by 15 points over a guy who denied the election, over a guy who was a conspiracy theorist. You also understand what's happening on the ground in your state, how people are feeling about this economy. It's frustrated the White House that the numbers, the data is so strong. The economy, by most measures, is incredibly strong, but a lot of people aren't feeling that. So when you speak to President Biden later today, what will you tell him about the way, not just Democrats, but the way your state is feeling about the state of things right now, and how he ought to take on someone who denies the election?
Well, look, folks are worried here in Pennsylvania about rising costs. They're worried about crime. They're worried about their kids' education. And by the way, Willie, that's why we've cut taxes for seniors. We've raised the child care tax credit. We've invested an historic amount in our schools, and we've invested a lot more in policing to hire more police to keep our community safe. That's the work we've done in Pennsylvania. And I would point out I'm the only governor in the nation with a divided legislature, one house led by Republicans, one led by Democrats. And yet we've been able to find ways to come together and get that tangible stuff done. At the same time, I think it is possible, and it is critically important to carry on two conversations at once, because while Pennsylvanians are worried about that, they shouldn't have to also be worried about their democracy and freedom. And so I think it is important for the president to prosecute both of those cases. The cases on how he's going to do the kind of work we've done in Pennsylvania, and he has done a lot of that, to reduce costs and to focus on helping ordinary Americans get by, as well as the important conversation that needs to happen on democracy and freedom. Because if we don't have that strong foundation of democracy and freedom, it's hard to do all that other work that's necessary to be able to help Americans move forward. I think it's critically important that the president highlights both his record of achievement on these issues, as well as prosecuting the case on democracy and freedom, as I know he is very capable of doing.
Governor Shapiro, the last thing I want to do this morning is get you upset this early in the morning. But we had Governor Wes Moore.
Just hearing, Mike, just hearing from a Celtics fan this early upsets me. But out of respect for this great program, I'll allow you to go forward and ask your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Governor. But I want to point out that Governor Wes Moore, our friend, was on, and your friend was on yesterday, and he was bragging about the Ravens. The Eagles have had some difficulty lately. What would you say? What would your response be to Governor Wes Moore before I ask you a substantive question?
Man, Barnacle, you're really sticking it to me this morning. Look, yeah. I will tell you, I was with my good friend Wes, who's doing a hell of a job in Maryland, by the way. I was with him last year and talked a whole lot of, bleep in his direction when the birds were soaring and the Ravens weren't doing as well. And I expect him to give it back to me. The Ravens look really, really good. Hopefully the Birds can get on a run here and get hot at the end of the season. The last few weeks have been a struggle. But I'm sticking with the Birds, and hopefully Wes and I will be able to have a good Super Bowl bet together this year.
Okay, on substance now, you use a phrase that governors get stuff done. And you're well-known, and deservedly well-known, for when I-95 collapsed outside Philadelphia. About 16 seconds after it collapsed, you and the federal government were out there in your Superman capes and got the job done well ahead of time. Do you think you can convince the Biden political people to prevent all these Democrats from walking into walls they're so concerned about Joe Biden, and just having them focus on substance of getting things done?
Yeah, look, that's what governors do, especially Democratic governors, Wes Moore and others. We get stuff done. And you know what? So does Joe Biden. Take a look at I-95 for a moment. Joe Biden was my partner in that. I could not have gotten that road reopened within 12 days without the great partnership of Joe Biden, Secretary Buttigieg, and the federal government. They all stepped up and did a great job. And I think the president understands the critical importance of infrastructure and the critical importance of being there in a time of need and helping us understand we're all in this together. Mike, just to kind of stitch back to the opening questions from Mika and the fact that the president's going to be at Valley Forge together, President Washington famously understood the importance of not just being in Washington or in Virginia, but getting out across then this infant country and helping people understand that they're not just Pennsylvanians or Virginians, they are Americans, right? And we are all in this together. And I think President Biden understands that as well. And he proved that when it came to I-95, that, yes, this was a road in Philadelphia, of course, but it was a road that stitched us all together as Americans from Maine to Florida. And he understood the importance of partnering with us to get that done. I think that is the kind of attitude I bring to the governor's office every day. It's the kind of work that the president does every day to try and stitch us together, bring us together. And I think you're right in referencing I-95 because it is a great example of that, of helping us feel like we're all in this together. And when folks are questioning if we can do big things, we showed here in Philly, here in Pennsylvania, we can do big things. And the president was a great partner in that.
Governor, good morning. Those charged with re-electing President Biden actually feel pretty good privately about where they stand with swing voters, independents and swing voters. But they acknowledge they got some issues with the Democratic base right now, some core constituencies, voters of color, young voters, progressives, who some of them alienated what they see as the White House's handling of the Israel, Hamas war, those who are upset with some of his policies that haven't been able to get through Congress, those who are just disenchanted with the whole political process and might be looking for a third-party candidate. What's your message to those particular core voters, young voters, progressives, voters of color? What does the president need? How does he need to sell them to get them back?
I think what the president needs to do is talk about his record of achievement that has helped young people across this country. And I'll certainly do everything in my power to lift up that message and support it. I think it is right for young voters to, question these issues. I think it's right for them to question the president. I think it's right for them to challenge him and challenge all the candidates. But at the end of the day, if they value freedom, if they value democracy, if they value personal choice, if they value reproductive freedom, if they value LGBTQ rights, if they value a more affordable college, if they value more justice in our criminal justice system, the answer is clear, and that is re-electing Joe Biden.